Hello my friends, Shlomo here. As usual, I will be discussing some very unusual topics, and as a result, this video will be longer than usual, but more importantly, it will be deeper. We will go very deep into the rabbit hole. So put your thinking hats on, because you will need it. Just a short note before I start, and this is important generally and very important in this video. Ask why, not how. If you ask how instead of why, it will actually change your life. And you will see in this video that most of the topics I'm talking about is more about more about why and not how. Let me give you an example what I mean. Let's say that you walk in the desert or drive in the desert. I guess walking in the desert is not a good idea. And all of a sudden you run into this big machine, the size of a building, and it has clear walls so you can see everything inside, and you just stand there. It's really weird, right? So if you are going to go and start analyzing the machine and see what it's doing and how it's working and what can you do with it, this is called how. Okay? But if instead you're going to stop and say, wow, why is that machine here? Who put it here? What is the purpose of it? That would be why. And once you figure out the why, the how will sort itself out anyway. So, today, I want to talk about the ratio of the human characters in this world. And in the second part, I want to talk about the meaning of life and death, and maybe some of the mechanics of it. I will use the atom and the forces keeping it together from collapsing on itself as a metaphor for our first part. And don't worry, I'm not going to get into any quantum physics here. I'll just use that metaphor. So, as many of you probably know, there are four fundamental forces that keep the atom from collapsing on itself. Because the atom is 99 point, I don't know what percent empty space, and then there is some particles that are moving in it at very, very high speed, close to the speed of light. But we perceive it as solid. And those forces are the gravity, electromagnetism, the weak atomic force, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force. Now, if those forces were to be changed by a billionth of a percentage point, the atom would collapse on itself, and the universe, as we know it, would disappear. Which, by the way, raises some very interesting questions about our reality. If it can disappear just like that, then what is it, right? Okay, now there is another just as important balance in our world. And if that one changes, the world as we know it, the reality as we know it, will also completely collapse. And what I'm talking about is the ratio of human characters in the world. And when I talk about ratio, what I mean is how many of each type of characters exist. So if there is people like Hitler, maybe there is 1.3% of that, and so on. And I know, at least for myself, because it's all subjective, of course, that that ratio was kept from the beginning of humanity. It was always exactly the same. And today, with 7.6 billion people, it's still the same. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about the ratio, okay? And interestingly enough, countries are actually a concentration of certain character traits. I'm sure that you observe that, and I know that it's presumed that the culture of a country and the unique upbringing causes the people to be that way, but actually it's the other way around. It's because of that collection of characters in a particular country, they create that culture. Now, keep in mind that people do not change. People may change on very rare occasions, like if they go through near-death experience, NDE, or some other trauma, but normally people don't change. And I would say not most, all religious leaders, spiritual teachers, activists, and just anybody who is trying to make the world a better place is trying to change people. It's basically trying to make them love their neighbor types. Love their neighbors as they love themselves types, right? This is what we would consider, if everybody was like that, the world would be a better place. Well, it's not the case, but it's very similar to what was believed about gay people, that they can be re-educated and changed and become normal people. Well, today we know that this is not true, even though some cultures and countries maybe still believe it is doable, but we know it's not true. So if God actually wanted us to be loving your neighbor types, then we probably would. The whole world would be this type of people, right? Because God is omnipotent and can do whatever he wants or whatever it wants. But obviously the plan is different because we are not like that. So let's see what the plan is. I'm sure you remember that recently, at least in the last few years, we had many predictions and assumptions about a major shift or a change in our reality, in our universe, in our world, right? From the Mayan calendar to the coming of the Messiah and everything in between. Well, they are not far-fetched. It's the wisdom of the masses. It usually means that there is fire there, not just smoke. And here are the reasons. See, that balance that I was talking about of the human characters is shifting, but it's not shifting between the human characters. It's shifting between the human characters and the stage that they are performing on. The stage has changed dramatically in the last, I would say, 100 years or so, 200 years, and the change is actually accelerating. So what I want to do, I want to show you a metaphor here that I will call a match between skills and reality. Do you remember Monopoly? I think it still exists. It's a game, it's a board game where you play kind of a businessman, real estate developer, and whoever doesn't go bankrupt at the end wins the game, right? And what I've observed since I was a kid, that there were always the same winners in this game. And actually, some of those people that I still know, they became very successful business people. So let's go to our metaphor here. Let's say that we have a huge container, just like something like the Matrix, and it's filled with the liquid that nobody can touch, smell, or feel. And that liquid has very unique characteristics. It makes people float, not according to their weight, but according to their skills and abilities in relation to our times, to our reality. So what I mean, and today's skills are basically, we are talking about how to make money, how to have influence, how to stay healthy, live for a long time. Those are the skills that we consider essential today. This is what everybody wants, right? So this container, this liquids actually makes people float or sink according to those skills. And the better the skills, the higher they go. So let me draw this container here. Okay, so let's say this is the container, and all 7.6 billion people are floating in this container. But before we come to today, let's move 300 years back. And 300 years ago, the situation was a little bit different in that container than it is today. First of all, let's draw borders between countries. Okay, those are borders between countries. And at that time also there were borders of your status in society, right? If you were very rich or close to the king, you would be somewhere up here. And if you were very poor, maybe a slave or something, you would be here. And the thing is that at that time, even though that fluid wanted to make you float, you could not float because of those boundaries at that time. Right? You couldn't cross very easily from country to country, and you could not become, say, aristocrat if you were a slave, and vice versa. If you were close to the king or you were an aristocrat at that time, there was not really a way that you would sink all of a sudden down to here. So everybody was safe, and the system was predictable. No surprises. Well, what happened really was that the people here at some point couldn't take it anymore, and this is where we got the revolutions, right? So now let's take that same container today. Let's draw that container again. See what happened today. The physical borders between countries are no longer valid for people with money. Because if you have the money, you can go and buy property and live practically anywhere in the world. So there are no borders per se. The horizontal borders also disappeared. Because if you, say, live in some third world country, and you're at the bottom of the container here, but you have the skills required today, you know how to program, you are a genius in math or science, whatever, you will float to the top because there's nothing to stop you from going there. But it also applies the other way around. So if your skills are mostly physical, to be a cashier or any job that you get like $10-12 an hour, you will come down here, whether you like it or not, because these guys will go up there and push you down. They will take your place. They will buy your property, will give you a good price, and you will think you got a deal, but then after a year you will spend the money and you will end up down here. Problem with that is that it's not sustainable. This is not sustainable. Where we are today, it cannot go on like this, because the revolution that will happen today is not going to be in a particular country. You'll get a revolution on a worldwide basis. And the people at the top either get killed or they will have to have fences, just like maybe South Africa used to have before apartheid was over, right? So it doesn't work. And this happened because of the shift in the balance between the characters, the players, and the stage they were performing on. And this would be similar when we use that atom metaphor. It would be similar to taking that atom from our universe and moving it to another universe where the laws of physics are different. Obviously, that atom would collapse because that balance is not going to be valid anymore. And this is what we have done with this balance of characters. We move them to a different reality, today's reality. So, what has to happen? Either the balance has to change, the balance of the characters has to change to fit into today's reality, and what that would mean that we would have way more people that, or everybody would have the skills to succeed in today's environment, and that's not feasible right now. Or the purpose of life must change. So that means that we will, what is considered cool today, right? The making money and being powerful and influential and all these things will not be cool anymore. The reality will change so that the purpose of our lives, the way we perceive it, is not going to be that anymore. We will be looking for something else. That will solve the problem as well. And hence, all those prophecies, because this is what is coming. This is the shift that's coming. What is cool today is not going to be cool tomorrow. This is going to change drastically. And the pyramid that we have today, where we have at the very top, we have the bankers and all those people that make 100 million a year. And then at the bottom, we have people which are spiritual and artistic and so on, sitting at the bottom of the pyramid. That pyramid will go upside down. This is the new reality that's coming. What I am doing here, the purpose of this whole program I'm running, is actually to bring that change. And the way it's going to happen is that people will understand many things about our reality they don't know today. And that will change the way how they think. And as a result, the reality will shift. So this is my goal. That's how I want to change the world. Now, I will leave you to ponder this idea and move to the next topic, which is life and death. Now, a few days ago, a friend of mine, young guy, lost a loved one to suicide. And he called me and he asked me, he said, "What happens when we die?" So, I don't pretend to know for sure what happens when we die because I never died. But I will tell you what I think. And I think it will be very interesting. And again, I'll use another metaphor here. The metaphor I'll use is actually, believe it or not, a balloon. Okay? I would have preferred a round balloon, but I cannot do what I need to do with the round balloon, so I'll use this one. So, you see, life and consciousness are the same. It's the same thing. There is no life with no consciousness, and there is no consciousness without life. So, in this balloon demo, I'm going to talk about life, death, and I will also try to explain reincarnation, previous life, spirituality, and mediums. Mediums, I mean the ones that talk to the dead. I will do all that with that balloon. So, let's say that this balloon, or actually what's in it, is the collective consciousness, or you can call it God. So what's in this balloon is the consciousness from which everything else receives its life and its consciousness, okay? So, when a new baby is born, what happens, as you see here, this is what happens, okay? See, this is the new baby. And because it is sealed here, even though it has everything that the collective consciousness has, it doesn't know it because it's separated here from the collective consciousness. Now, when that baby grows up and gets old and dies, this is what happens. See? Now, that should be straight, but this is what happens. There is no... So it didn't really die. What happened really is that it lost its uniqueness, its individuality. But nothing died here, the same way as nothing new was created really here. It's the same thing. It's just the separation, right? Now, what happens is, and just before I go out, what happens when we die, I want to talk about still while we are alive. This seal here, this separation, is not complete. It has leaks. I don't know if it's by design or it's a defect, but it has leaks. There is some leak. And the more it leaks, the more spiritual and the more aware the person is of this collective consciousness. So somebody who is say psychic and can actually see and connect to this collective consciousness and come up with information that nobody knows, that opening is wider for that person. Okay? Now, let's talk about reincarnation and previous lives and so on. The reason for it is not because that soul or whatever reincarnated again. That's not the case. What happens is that because the life and consciousness content for that particular person comes from here, sometimes it comes with some information, because in here there is all the information of everything that ever happened in this reality. Okay, everything is in here. So when this new baby is born, it may receive some of that information, and it will feel to that baby or to that boy or whatever age, that actually that happened to them, but it didn't. It's just that the information is there. And this is where the whole idea of reincarnation, previous lives, and so on comes from. There's no such thing. It's just that the information is there. Because once this goes back, right, everything that happened in this person's life now becomes part of that collective consciousness. And the reason that mediums, for example, can actually communicate with the dead is because, like I said before, the medium has access to this collective consciousness. And through that access here, it can actually, through the sixth sense, this is what I call it, they can actually create a communication with an energy of a person that lived previously. Now, when you pass away, you cannot experience, or you cannot create any new experiences anymore. That's it. But you can actually live through the experiences that you created here. So this is really the library that you have over there. You can go over and over and over to recreate the experiences that you had here. So the more good experiences you create here, the more you will have in your library over there. You can observe what's going on here, but you cannot interact with it except through that medium thing. So you can actually see or feel whatever that the sense over there is, I don't know, but you can actually see and what's going in this reality here forever. And by the way, what happened to those friends of mine who used the healing olive at the time, and there's I think around 400 of you, and the people that use the drop of youth today, is that one of the things that it does to you, it actually expands that opening here. And if you think about what happened to you, remember you wrote me many letters and comments from the Healing Olive days, you will see that most of it happened because your connection to the collective consciousness became wider. Now, a few words about the current Corona crisis, right? And remember, I said, ask why, not how. Now, what happens right now with the Corona is equivalent to the first move in a chess game, right? When you usually move one of the pawns forward. This is the beginning of the rebalancing I'm talking about. So the Corona is just the first move of a chess pawn on the board. So there are many moves coming after. And also keep in mind, as I said in many of my videos, that miracles, what we consider a miracle, always masquerades in casual dress. It's always dressed in casual clothing. So you don't really know that this is actually a miracle. And a miracle could be good, bad, doesn't matter. Anything extraordinary that happens, you consider a miracle. It doesn't happen. It happens through nature. So that virus here, the Corona, is just one of those tools to bring something and make you feel that this is just, it's dressed in normal clothing, right? Because viruses always been around and so on. But you have to ask why, not how. So before I finish here, I have a challenge for you. It turns out that 84% of the world population belongs to a religion. That's what Wikipedia says, and I think this is correct. It's actually valid for 2020. So what I would like you to do, and you can write your answer in the comments here on YouTube, is what do you mean when you say I'm connected with God, I experienced God, I felt God, I talked to God? What does it mean to you? Because it's, for every individual in the world, it's a different experience. So let's hear about some experiences. What does it mean to you? And another thing is to make you think once you go away. You see, the universe is not infinite, but it's not finite either. So what is it? I will explain it in future videos unless you figure it out before. I also wanted to talk about dreams, but we covered quite a bit in this video, so we'll do it next time. And I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the wonderful feedback you provide. It's much more powerful than the corona reality here, so I can stay happy. And also, please share those videos if you enjoy them and it touches you. Please share it, because the numbers are important for us to create the change. So I'm sending you all of my spiritual vitality to keep you in good place.